All right. Welcome to the show. This is the Frankly Fantasy Football Podcast. We are your hosts, Frankie and Johnny. Welcome back, Frankie. Hey, man, we got some football actually on TV recently. What'd you think about the Hall of Fame? Well, kind of football. It was, there was a game on.
There was a game. Hey, yeah. It was the beginning stages of, the best time of the year, man. And we got to witness Joe Thomas get inducted into the Hall of Fame. That's why I'm decked out in Browns gear, baby. I'm repping. It was awesome, man. Just to be able to see some football on and everything.
How good does Joe Thomas look? Isn't it funny? You know what I know? Did you see Darrelle Revis too, by the way? He looked like a lineman. It looks like
Joe Thomas.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how the linemen get skinnier, and get built and look good. And then the defensive backs just go to shit. It's like, my God. And it's not like these guys are my age, they're not 45 years old. These guys are like 38.
Yeah.
40, maybe. What'd you think of the game? Any takeaways? I mean, it was all backups, obviously, but
I'll tell you what. Yeah, John, it was backups, but I'll tell you what, man, there were a few key takeaways for me. DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 5th round pick from the Browns. I'll tell you what, for those of you who don't know, John, I mean, you know this, but UCLA, he's the record holder in the most passing yards. I believe he has the most touchdown passes as well. We got him in the 5th round, and he looked like a freaking stud. I get what he's doing.
He looked good.
He's playing against backups. So he looked great. And John, I am telling you, we have a monster right tackle that is going to be dominant. And Dewan Jones,
man. Big Thanos.
6'8", 374, looking like a beast, bro. Yeah, I'm all about it.
0 pressures he allowed. 0. He's just a wall.
First rounders against last year's first round picks. Okay. Mm-hmm. He's a 4th rounder. We got a steal for him this year, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was exciting. It was fun to watch. It was fun to watch football. It was fun to see just, a little bit of scheming, a little bit of play. It was, it was nice. It's just, it gets you in. I got goosebumps. It tells you that we're almost there, man. We're so close. We're so close. A couple more shitty games and we're so close, baby. Welcome to the show, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We've got a great show today. Today, we're going to be talking about it. We're doing a Would You Rather. And we're going to be talking about some stacks today in our Would You Rather. One of my favorite strategies when I draft is stacking. We're also going to get into the news and notes. And then today we've got our new faces in new places part 1. We're going to be talking about the quarterbacks and the running backs today that are on new teams. These are guys in the free agency that went to new teams. A lot of these guys, high draft picks. These are guys that are going to have major implications on your fantasy team. And we're going to get into that here in a second. You know what was fun, Frankie, is I get to play a drop here that, I'm not going to get to play it very often, but it was fun watching the Thursday night game, the Hall of Fame game. And, it made me think of this guy.
Approximately 3 times a week, I have unprotected sex with your mother.
Yeah, it was a little Zach Wilson showing. I have to do it, Shout out to Zach Wilson. I hope to God we never see you this season. But you know what? It was nice to see you in a preseason game. All right. Little fucking Mormon kid, guys. Shout out. That's an old school pool there for us, man. Pool. Oh, yeah, definitely. All right, let's get into the Would You Rather today, Frankie.
Would you rather poke a stick up in your eye or eat a bag of shit? Sit up on a pineapple or throw it on her dick. I said, would you rather?
Makes me laugh every time. Thank you, sister. All right. Our Would You Rather today, we're going to look at a couple of stacks. Let's compare 2 stacks. Right now, one of my favorite stacks that I'm going after for sure this year, we've got Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews stack. Baltimore Ravens connection. Mark Andrews is healthy. Lamar Jackson is healthy. I love this stack. Now, you're looking at taking these guys. You're looking at Mark Andrews in the 3rd round. Lamar Jackson, he's right around that 3rd round as well. You almost have to do it at the end, right, Frankie? You almost have to stack it up at the turn there. But it's definitely doable, and it's something that if I can do, I'm trying to do it. So we're going to look at Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews versus Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley. Yeah, it's the new hotness. There's a lot of question marks with this one, of course. We're all expecting Trevor Lawrence, Sir Trevor, to take the next step forward. And Calvin Ridley is one of the biggest question marks in the entire draft in the league right now, really, to be honest. Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is a fourth round pick right now, correct?
Yep. That's correct.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence going in the fifth. So this is definitely a feasible stack that you can put together. So Frankie, break it down for me. Like let's go with Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews versus Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley. What's your thought process here? What do you like?
So John, this is interesting because you really like Lamar and Andrews. I do. Lawrence and Ridley. And so we thought this would be fascinating, guys. And the reason being is because Lamar with Andrews, there's already a connection there. We've already seen it. We've already seen Mark Andrews be dominant. His ADP, as John mentioned, his average draft position where he is being taken is 27th, which it means, yeah, he is towards that early third round. Maybe you can sneak and get him in the second if you really want him. But John, it's interesting because when you're looking at these guys, right, they continue to put up numbers year after year, day in and day out. Now for me, John, which is interesting, I am not as high on Lamar and Mark Andrews. And I'll tell you why. Because of where you have to take them. If you want them, you have to get them in second and third round. Lamar's more than likely not going to make it to the fourth round. So you have to go second and third, or maybe super early fourth round if it's like, right, to John's point, back half snake, right, when you're getting, last pick of the third, first pick of the fourth type of thing. So for me, it's too rich. It's too rich for my blood. I would prefer going and waiting to that fourth and fifth round to get a super risky receiver, right? And Calvin Ridley, but also, and kind of a risky quarterback. Like, was that a fluke last year? Like, are we actually seeing a real trajectory of that of Trevor Lawrence? But the reason why I love Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley is because I can potentially set up my team in a way where I can go running back early, running back again, and then potentially go a receiver one, right? And then pair that with Calvin Ridley and then go Trevor Lawrence. So for me, I can stack my team in a way that ends up being more anchored at running back. That way I can take a more risky pick towards that of a Calvin Ridley and even a Trevor Lawrence. And then maybe what I'll do is I'll take that, one of my late round picks, taking a backup QB or, getting heavier in the receiver room compared to John. I'm going to have to go Lamar Jackson. We know, yes, he is healthy, and yes, he looks really good in camp, but we know he has injury history. And what's going to happen with Isaiah Likely? Is Isaiah Likely going to bleed a little bit into some of that of Mark Andrews? We know they're really great in running two tight end sets. So I don't think so, but you never know. Isaiah Likely really panned out well last year when Mark Andrews went down. So for me, John, if we're talking, would you rather, I'm rocking with Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley.
You're a discount shopper. You're a bargain shopper.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. I love both of these stacks. I mean, I think there's an incredible amount of risk, obviously, with Lawrence and with Ridley, just with the Ridley side. But you've got risk everywhere. You can't say that Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson have been the pillars of health over the past 5 years either. They haven't. So there's definitely risk there. But yeah, it's really, to me, it's roster construction. You're looking at Lamar and Mark Andrews. That's basically your second and third round pick for the most part, which means you're anchoring your team with that first round, and it's likely going to be more towards the back of the first round in order for this to really work for you. But you're looking at, do I anchor with a running back? Could I get a Nick Chubb or a Saquon Barkley, pair it up with Lamar and Andrews? You can absolutely do that. Your receivers are going to be rough. You're not getting a receiver then until fourth, fifth round. And they really start to dwindle there. There's just a big pile of guys there. It's kind of a dead zone for receiver. I much more like the running backs a little bit later, guys that are falling like Miles Sanders and Rashad White, like we talked about, some of those guys. I almost like grabbing a receiver in that first round, almost taking the Lamar and Andrews stack. It really opens you up to a 0 RB strategy.
Yes.
Which I love this year. I really do, because of how front loaded the receivers are, and some of these positions like Lamar, there's only two tight ends I would do. It's a Kelsey and it's a Mark Andrews. Kelsey's obviously in the first round, in the back half of that. Mark Andrews, third round. If I'm in the third round anywhere in the draft, I love snagging Mark Andrews. I just think it's a onesie position, and it's having a guy that performs better than most receivers. I think it gives you an advantage each and every week. But I do love that stack, but it is very expensive. You're going to have to really strategize, and you're going to sacrifice in one position. You just will. It's going to be running back or receiver. The Trevor Lawrence and the Calvin Ridley stack, yeah, man, I love that. And the other thing is the price. It doesn't stress your team out at all. You can still draft whatever strategy you want. You can still have a very balanced team, and there's just you'll have a ton of talent on your team before you even grab this stack. So I think this stack will make you feel a lot better about your team, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And John, you hit the nail on the head. Like, you could, if you're going with that Lamar and that Mark Andrews, I would highly recommend going zero RB strategy. And for people who don't know what zero RB strategy means or what that means you're waiting on RB to draft a running back until that fifth, fourth, sixth
More like
round.
Six, seven rounds is really, you're really filling out your entire roster other than running backs. Grabbing your quarterback and tight end early, loading up on, your 2 or 3 receivers, whatever you need there, then getting into running back. And then you're going to draft like 4 running backs in a row. And you're getting these guys, 6, 7, 8, 9th round, and just loading up on guys, hoping to hit, knowing that you can play the waiver wire and make trades. But if you've got those other positions totally locked down, then you just got to play with running back, which, to be honest, I think the reason why the zero RB strategy started is because you can draft 3 running backs right off the rip and you're still playing the running back game. I mean, it's difficult with the injuries, with the wear and tear on these guys. It's tough. Yeah. So you might as well go into it and say, you know what, I'm going to play this game anyway. I might as well plan on playing the game and load up on the best talent in the other positions.
And Lamar's already a running back to a certain degree, John. That's the other thing that makes a lot of sense with Lamar.
Yeah.
So you could get Devontae Adams. You can get something like that towards the back half, guys, and then go Lamar or Mark Andrews, and then Lamar, and then you go another receiver, and then go crazy on running back. And now that's kind of sexy, man. Actually,
it's very sexy.
Shoot, I mean,
yeah, it is. It really is. I mean, you're planning that draft out already. It's taking a guy starting off with Devontae Adams, Lamar Jackson, and Mark Andrews, and another receiver in the 4th round. I mean,
go DJ Moore.
You can go DJ Moore. You could go Calvin Ridley. Ridley. Right.
You can take Trevor Lawrence in the 5th and have a backup. Why not?
Yeah, and then trade like a maniac, like you do. I know. Anything left on these 2 stacks? I do love both of these guys, but you're absolutely right. It's about strategy and it's about price. You can get the Lawrence and Ridley at a much lower price with serious potential upside. Potential upside. All right, let's get to the next stack here. We're going to look at another one here. We've got this one's sexy, man. This one's really sexy. You've got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase versus Justin Fields and DJ Moore. Wow. I like this. This is a stack that you weren't expecting to have this year, were you? Let's talk a little bit. I know you love this one, and it's a great graphic, Frankie. Nice work on that one. Let's talk about Justin Fields and DJ Moore. Give me kind of a breakdown of how you're feeling about these guys.
So they're incredible. Like, I really, really am high on Justin Fields, DJ Moore. And I want to shout out as well, Clutch Sports, guys. They have awesome graphics. Check them out. They do such a cool job. Really good job. But the thing that I like about Fields and Moore is the exact reason why I also like Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence. You get them at a bargain discount, and you can fill out that early part of your team. If you want to go heavy receiver, even you can go running back and multiple receivers. Shit, you can even get a Kelsey if you want in that 1st round, and then be able to fill out from there. From what I'm hearing, John, in camp, this is like these two have worked together for years. And Justin Fields, I truly believe in my soul, what's fascinating about him is that the last 7 games of the year, he had the 4th highest QBR. And people are, we're outright saying they need to draft another quarterback, all this stuff. What people don't understand is the Bears were shit. They didn't have anything. Claypool was awful.
He was running for his life.
He was running for his life. Darnell Mooney was hurt, right? Cole Kmet was just coming into the fold, right? Brand new regime came in. Guys, what we saw from Justin Fields was incredible. And for those that are even questioning it, he was amazing at Ohio State, not running the ball. throwing the ball. And so now that he actually has Darnell Mooney back, we mentioned Tyler Scott, shout out, brother. And then now you have DJ Moore as the number one. This could be really special. This could be a really special year for Justin Fields and DJ Moore. And the reason why I like them again, John, I can't beat this into the ground enough, is the bargain buy. We're looking at Justin Fields' ADP, average draft position, being 47th, and DJ Moore's being 55. What that means is, guys, you're either Justin Fields back half of 4 or early 5, and DJ Moore maybe fifth round. So you can legitimately get these guys as well in that 4th, 5th, maybe 6th round, depending on how the draft is going. And now you're set up for a very early push in getting maybe that Nick Chubb or getting maybe Bijan Robinson or Travis Kelce, and you start building up from there. Very similar to that, again, as I mentioned, Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, this is an exciting stack. And again, it's also because of price. This one's beautiful. The price you're paying for the upside that you may get, this is an upside play. I think we're all expecting, the industry as a whole is expecting for Justin Fields to take a step forward. He's got a prolific pass catcher. DJ Moore is very good. You look as a fantasy owner, he's kind of boring and a little bit annoying. He's been a wide receiver 2 his entire career. I mean, that's just where he is. He's a low end wide receiver 2. He's been very steady. He's got a high floor. He just hasn't had a ceiling in Carolina. He's had shit quarterbacks. My God. Now he's got a quarterback. Everything at camp, just like you're saying, is that their connection is really, really nice. I think this just has the recipe for something absolutely delicious. I think it could really, not only will it take Justin Fields to the next level in fantasy, but I think it's going to take DJ Moore to the next level. I think we're going to see this guy slowly come into a wide receiver 1 type performance this year. And you're getting him as a low end wide receiver 2. So I love the value there. You're looking at 4th, 5th round to be able to grab these guys and stack them. You're loading up on 3 studs prior to this, and then you get a beautiful stack here, and he's probably not even going to be your wide receiver 1. It's probably your 2 at this point. You know, if you were able to grab one of those badass receivers in the 1st round, grab a quarterback or a running back in the 2nd round, and maybe even do something crazy like a Mark Andrews in the 3rd. You can go 4th and 5th and get these 2.
Crazy.
That really sets up a nice team with a lot of good upside there, man. I really like that. All right, let's get into who we're comparing them to here. And these guys, I mean, this is an awesome stack. It is one of the most fun stacks to have, man. Definitely. My God, break it down. Little Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase.
I mean, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, the reason why this is interesting, guys, and we are comparing them to Justin Fields and DJ Moore, is because Burrow's ADP, average draft position, right now is 33. What that means is you have to take Burrow in the 3rd round. He is not making it past the 3rd round. No. Even with him being a little bit banged up, I still believe he's going to be in the 3rd round. And Jamar Chase's ADP? Oh, I'm glad you asked. 3. He is 3rd. So if you have 1, 2, or 3 picks, you better take Jamar Chase. And so this is the interesting thing. John, are you willing to take Jamar Chase and within your first 3 picks, which means you have to be front end? So guys, think about this. You are front end of your draft. You go all the way down, all the way back. That means you can maybe get a running back. You can maybe get another receiver, but then you have to pick Joe Burrow. You have to pick him right there on that snake on the 3rd. So are you willing to do that? Or are you willing to wait for a Fields and a DJ Moore? And so this is what's interesting because, I mean, Burrow's prolific. He's arguably, I'm just going to say it, he's probably in the top 2, top 3. He's up there with the Josh Allen's, Patrick Mahomes, and then probably him. Actually, it's probably Patrick Mahomes, him, and then Josh Allen, maybe Jalen Hurts, and maybe Aaron Rodgers now. Who knows, right? So, but top 2, top 3, absolutely. Jamar Chase, same thing. Top 2, top 3 in your position. So you're telling me that you could have the top 2 guys in their prospective positions, but you're paying the highest price point possible. That's the decision you're going to be looking at if you choose a stack. So, John, I'm curious to know your thought. For me, again, I'm a bargain buyer because of the way I strategize. I'm active as shit, and I'm trying to trade constantly. But for those that maybe just want to sit and like to your point, eat a delicious meal and know that it's already pre-cooked, steaks there, baby, it's medium rare, and you don't got to do a damn thing to it. right? Would you rather have that, or do you want to, have a microwave meal that you got to kind of makeshift a bit? I'm hungry.
I want something tasty, baby. I want the steak, man. What are you talking about? Yeah, you and I draft very similarly. I'm kind of a bargain shopper as well. I like to put together teams based on, values of guys. But sometimes if you want good players, you got to take them at their ceiling. I mean, Jamar Chase is arguably one overall. You could make the argument.
You could absolutely make the argument.
Yeah, I think you could. But he's definitely in those top 3 picks. I mean, he's generally at number 2. It's usually Jefferson, Chase, McCaffrey, and you can interchange those 3. But it's expensive, but you know what? It's fun, man. I mean, it's like what we talked about with Lamar and Mark Andrews. This one's even more fun because it's exciting to watch, And again, if you're looking at doing this, could lend itself to a 0 RB strategy. You're taking these guys in your first round and your third round, and you're going to be right in the beginning there. You're going to be right on the turn. So you could come back and go wide receiver, take Burrow, and maybe fill in a round 4 with maybe you can snag a Mark Andrews if he falls to you there, or even look at a Kyle Pitts to put in your roster, put another receiver there. There's things you can do, but yeah, it's expensive. I mean, you're paying for it. No question about it. Again, Justin Fields, DJ Moore, it's much more of a discount. You're feeling better about your team, knowing that you've got a rushing quarterback like Justin Fields with a passing weapon like DJ Moore. If they unlock, you've got a great team. I mean, I think it's really looking at ADPs. If those guys will take the next step forward, which I don't think that's really baked into their ADPs yet. I think they could climb a little bit as preseason goes on. You see some really nice connections with them. I think their ADPs will rise. I think people are starting to wake up to DJ Moore a little bit more, just seeing the opportunity, seeing how things are shaking out there. But at the moment, I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful price for these guys. Yeah.
John, question, because I've never actually, just for the listeners and viewers out there, I personally never really target stacks. You always have. Why is it, just curious, that you've always wanted to target stacks? Is it because you just like the connection? Is it because it's fun? Is it because of a strategy? What is that? Because you had Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown last year. The previous years, you had Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, right?
Yep.
Like, what is it that you, like, why do you want to do a stack? And what is it about you choosing to do one?
There's a lot of data on this now, and you can read articles and things, about fantasy football, about doing stacks. And there's a lot of data on just the bonus points you're getting. And there is an advantage. Now you can live and die by the stack as well, but that's why some stacks are so nice because, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, it's very rare that's going to fail you. Sure. Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, some of the other big stacks, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Kelsey and Mahomes. Those are rarely going to hurt you. And you're getting bonus points. Every time they throw a touchdown to each other, you're getting 2 touchdowns on your team, plus the yardage, plus the bonuses. So it just really gives you those boner weeks, and I love doing that. I love having secondary stacks where it's not necessarily the stud receiver or the number 1 on the team. You could look at stacking, Jalen Hurts with Devonta Smith. You could look at Joe Burrow with T. Higgins. You can do stacks too, like you were looking at with even DJ Moore, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence with Calvin Ridley. You could do Trevor Lawrence with Evan Ingram. There's a lot of really nice stacks in there, especially I like them with tight ends, especially because you don't typically get tons of points out of your tight end. So you can maximize a touchdown out of your tight end by having the quarterback attached to him. So I really do like the strategy, and it feels good. It's fun. I mean, it's just fun when you've got a connection with your receiver and your quarterback and they throw a 50-yard bomb touchdown. I mean, you're just jumping up off your couch, just fucking going crazy, Yeah, man, it's beautiful. It's so much fun. So I love those kind of strategies that, number 1, have the data to support that they work. And number 2, that makes it so much more fun. So yeah, I'm into it, man. I love the stacks. All right. Sounds good here. Let's get into some news, man.
The season your listeners don't expect. Let's get some flip out.
News and notes.
Okay, a little bit of news here with Alvin Kamara. We've been waiting for this, and this is about what we thought we'd get here. But Alvin Kamara, running back for the New Orleans Saints, did get suspended for 3 games for an altercation he had in Vegas. All right, so let's break this down. It's kind of been baked into his ADP with Alvin Kamara. Yeah. I think everybody's been a little scared to take him. He's been going pretty late. Is it like 6th round? I think something like that. I mean, this is a dude. He's been drafted in the 1st and 2nd round over the past 5 years. You know, what are we looking at now with this New Orleans backfield? Knowing, you know, we've got answers that Alvin Kamara. 3 games, you're not going to have them. We've got Jamal Williams, who we're going to talk about, new face in a new place here in New Orleans. And we have a rookie that we already talked about with Kendra Miller. Yeah. So break that down for me. What's that backfield look like? And are you comfortable taking Alvin Kamara and where?
Great question. I am taking Alvin Kamara definitely in the 6th. If he's there, 5th round, 6th round, I love that because it's very, very low risk at that point. Assuming that you probably went receiver, running back, you at least have maybe 1 running back, maybe 2, right? Your team's already developing, right? Very, very low risk in my opinion. Now, in terms of the 3-game suspension and looking at this from a fantasy perspective, love me some Jamal Williams. Love it. Yeah. Love it. Love it. Love it. Guys, Jamal Williams right now, and we'll touch on him in a bit, but his ADP is 95, right? Which means he is, I mean, it's a while that he's going to be drafted. We're talking like middle rounds, 8, 9, maybe something along those lines. Probably not 9, but probably 7 or 8. And so really interesting. So I think that Jamal Williams is going to probably take the lion's share of the load, especially on that goal line where he excelled at Detroit. But don't discount Kendra Miller, man. I mean, the dude has flashed in camp, and then with Eno Benjamin going down, right, with an Achilles. I mean, it's wide open. That backfield is wide open, especially for the first 3 games. And the Saints, right, might try to make a play to say, okay, I really want to know what Kendra Miller can do while Alvin Kamara is out because, you know, contract talks, right, with Alvin Kamara and things of that nature. So for me, man, I definitely think Jamal Williams should be on everybody's radar to draft. Maybe if you want to sneak up and get him in the 6th or even the early round of the 7th, go for it because you're going to get value in those first 3 games. And then maybe you try to flip him, try to trade him quickly, right? Because Alvin Kamara might get hurt. You know, the usage there is also a problem in the past, right? Because they had Mark Ingram and previously that would pair well with Alvin Kamara. So I really like Jamal Williams. And I think Kendra Miller could be, right, John, you talk about it all the time, taking a high fly guy towards the end of your draft to see what nobody knows what happens. What if Alvin Kamara gets hurt? Now you have that 1-2 punch with Kendra Miller stepping into the play and you drafted him in round 15, round 14, right? So I definitely think this is interesting. I'm still taking Alvin Kamara 6th round. Love me some Jamal Williams.
Yeah, and let's, you know, take into consideration the division. Their division is weak as fuck. It's terrible. And you look at the schedule for the New Orleans Saints. I mean, they've got one of the most favorable schedules I've ever seen, man. I mean, these are the teams they're playing. Tennessee, Carolina, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, New England, Houston, Jacksonville, Indy, Chicago, Minnesota, Atlanta twice, Carolina twice, Detroit, the Giants, the Rams. This schedule looks great. I mean, there's going to be fantasy points coming out of this backfield, and it's really just kind of figuring out where it's coming from. You know, Alvin Kamara is going to have a role. He's healthy. He absolutely will have a role. I think it's more... this could really be a 3-headed monster after 3 weeks. I mean, it could be really convoluted, but somebody's going to have value there. Kendra Miller and, you know, Jamal Williams, you're going to see in the red zone. You're going to see them at the goal line. Alvin Kamara, he's going to be in the game. And I think it might get him back to the efficiency numbers that he had before. If the touchdowns can come up this year, I think Alvin Kamara could be a steal in the draft. Yeah. Now you got to sit on him for a while. I mean, that's not always fun. You know, you're not going to be able to use him until week 4. So you've got a little bit of a roster clog there, but I think it's worth it. You know, as long as his ADP stays in that round 6 area, I'm totally cool with that. You know, absolutely. Okay, let's move on here in the news. Just a couple of injuries to look at that we're monitoring here week to week. Nothing devastating too bad right now, but that's a good thing. Joe Burrow walked off the field with a calf strain. He is going to miss a few weeks. Again, I think it's every day it's getting more and more questionable that he's going to be playing week 1 is what it sounds like right now. But we'll have to keep an eye on that and see. Denver loves Javonte Williams' progress right now. Yeah, I mean, wow, what a comeback story here that is. He is going to play in the preseason, they said. So we're going to get to see a little bit of Javonte. His value is going to go up as soon as you see him on the field, man. Tim Patrick for the Denver Broncos wide receiver will miss the 2023 season. Tore his Achilles, man. God, he had an ACL last year, missed all of 22. And now he's got a torn Achilles. That's pretty much the kiss of death for this guy. I think this was his last year on his contract. It's almost impossible to come back from an Achilles injury like that in the NFL. Really tough, man. Really tough for Tim Patrick. Kadarius Toney, we're just monitoring this. Andy Reid says there's a chance for the first game, but we'll see. That to me doesn't sound very good. That's not very reassuring from the walrus staring at the Waffle House menu with Andy Reid. So not a lot of information there, bud. Kenneth, speaking of not giving information, Pete Carroll is the worst, by the way, for the Seahawks. I know. But let's hear what he's saying about his running backs. They're a little banged up in the backfield there with Kenneth Walker. He's resting right now with a groin injury. They say he doesn't feel bad and it doesn't seem very serious. They're just taking precautions. But again, we talked about that. And sure enough, the beginning of camp, the guy gets hurt already. So that's it. It's tough. I think it might be a bit of a roller coaster up and down with the soft tissue issues with Kenneth Walker this year. I hate saying that because I love him, but it makes me nervous. I don't like drafting guys coming into preseason and camp with soft tissue issues. I just don't. Now, the rookie we talked about, Zach Charbonnet, who's breathing down Kenneth Walker's neck, he's missed a couple of practices as well with some shoulder discomfort. It's kind of a weird. They're not really saying much about what the injury is, and they're not giving a timetable, and they're just saying they're being precautious right now. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that and see what his status is looking like. But I hope he can play. I want to see him in the preseason. I want to see him carry the ball. I want to see how he looks out there. I hate drafting rookies without getting a chance to see them on the field at all. Cooper Kupp, his injury is not expected to impact week 1 status. So Cooper Kupp had a little bit of a hamstring injury, made me nervous because I was all about Cooper Kupp this year. But again, I don't like drafting receivers, especially with hamstring or soft tissue issues. But it's not expected to impact his week 1 status. So keep an eye on that. Calvin Ridley, your boy. You've taken him in the mocks. You like having the stack. He had a little toe injury this week. After looking into it, it was he changed cleats and fixed it. So it's nothing really to worry about. He seems like he's going to be fine. We got another suspension here. Ronald Jones, new face in a new place, who's a backup to Tony Pollard in Dallas, running back. He suspended 2 games, so he's going to miss the first 2 games. All right, Frank. Let's get into our new faces and new places. We got a lot of guys here. This is going to be 2 episodes. Today, we're going to talk about quarterbacks and running backs. And then next week, we're going to talk receivers and tight ends. But let's get right into it here with quarterbacks. All right, we got some guys that are some new faces and new places. I think the biggest name, the most exciting thing, maybe not necessarily for his fantasy value, but I think what he's going to do to the other players on the team, that's what we have to look at. It's not just about having these guys on your team. It's about what do they do with the surrounding receivers, the surrounding running backs and tight ends, and how do they affect them? All right, Aaron Rodgers, A-Rod, baby. Aaron Rodgers, yes, from the Green Bay Packers, is now the quarterback with the New York Jets. Frankie, break it down for us. What kind of impact are we looking at? I'm very excited about this team this year, and having Aaron Rodgers on that team, I think it's beautiful. They're making a run here. They've got a good 2 years, I think, with Aaron Rodgers to really make a run. How are we looking here? What's it going to do to us?
I think it's going to be game changing. I really do, for the Jets, for fantasy, for those guys that are on the Jets from last year. Just Aaron Rodgers, what we saw even out of the preseason game with him coaching, he has a different feel about him. He looks different. He feels different. He's giving off a different energy, right? It's probably due to the dark retreats and drinking some ayahuasca tea and shit. But at the end of the day, John, I expect big things. I expect huge things from Aaron Rodgers, actually. Last year, he had 263 total fantasy points. What does that mean, guys? Well, he averaged 14.7 points a game. Not good. But what it is interesting, though, is his ADP is 111. You can get Aaron Rodgers dirt cheap.
At the end of your draft. Yeah. I mean, he could be one of your last picks. Yeah.
Literally. I mean, we're talking 11th round, like 10th round, not 11th round, 10th round, 9th round at this point, if you wanted to in a 12-man league. And so, I mean, he's in the end, he's the 12th ranked QB. So in a 12-man league, right, you can get him as number 12. John, I am telling you right now, he's not going to end up the 12th quarterback overall this year. There's no way with what we're seeing. I mean, you have Breece Hall coming back. Everything is pointing to them potentially signing Dalvin Cook, which is going to take a lot of pressure off him. They have a reinforced offensive line. And then when you talk about the other weapons, Garrett Wilson, John, this is your guy. You've been loving this dude since day one last year. We talked about him very highly in the rookie review as well last year. And John, Garrett Wilson can absolutely be a top 10 guy. No question about it. Aaron Rodgers raises his ceiling extremely high. And I also love Allen Lazard. You can get Allen Lazard, which we'll talk about in the next episode, right? Part 2. But where he's being drafted, John, is incredible. You can get so much value for a guy that can end up being an excellent flex piece for you or even trade bait because of that already connection coming in, right? Corey Davis, in my personal opinion, is slowly going to be worked out, is going to be phased out, right? There's no hype about him. We're hearing more hype about Randall Cobb, for my God, than Corey Davis at this point, which is pretty nuts. So for me, man, Aaron Rodgers being on the Jets is salivatingly awesome. I love it. I think there's so much fantasy value here across the board. I couldn't be more thrilled.
That's another stack that I think is interesting. You can get him. You can punt on quarterback. You could take Garrett Wilson at a very high price, but I think he's going to return that value.
Yeah.
You know, that I'm very excited about Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers having that connection. I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to light up the fantasy stats, but I think he's going to help them really win a lot of games. I mean, the leadership and the things, I really like where he is. You're absolutely right. His vibe, his whole mental, state, I love where he is. And he's really showing some good leadership on this really, really young, promising team. I think it was a match made in heaven. I think it really is beautiful.
It looks like he's having fun again, John.
He knows he's got a couple of years left. He knows he's a Hall of Famer. As soon as he retires, 5 years later, the dude's going to be wearing a gold jacket. He knows all of these things. Yeah. So I think, he really wants to ride off into the sunset and see what he can do with this young team. And man, he should be excited because he's got some serious talent around him, man. It's really, really cool to see. I love it. All right, cool. Let's move on here. Another quarterback, Derek Carr. This is interesting. Derek Carr goes from Vegas. He's now in New Orleans. Derek Carr, he's a good quarterback. In my mind, look, he was able to support Devontae Adams. He was able to support multiple receivers on that team. Mac Hollins, Darren Waller. We've seen him put up pretty good fantasy numbers. And not only that, we've seen him be able to support a good fantasy cast. Now he's got Chris Olave, which everybody, just like Garrett Wilson, they're going right in that same range there. I think everybody's extremely excited about Chris Olave. He's got Michael Thomas, which again, who the fuck knows what's going on there, but he could be a surprise. I don't think you're going to make him your champion like you did last year, but shit. Yeah, but interesting piece. We just talked about the 3 running backs that they've got in the backfield there. Talk to me, Frankie. How are you feeling about Derek Carr with his transition to New Orleans?
You're not going to take him in a 12 quarter or in a 1 quarterback 12-man league. Like, Derek Carr is going to be on the waiver, right? Unless you love it, you're a Saints fan and you're just like, no, I want a piece of the Saints. Whatever, do your thing. 2 quarterback league, John, love it. Love it. Right, because you can wait on him. He had 254 fantasy points last year. If you remember what I said with Aaron Rodgers, he had 263. So he's not that far behind. And his ADP is 145. What that means is, guys, so late. Yeah. Now, in a 2 quarterback league, it won't be a 145, right? So he's going to move up quite significantly at that point because of the value of the quarterback. But he averaged 15.4 points a game. And so for a second quarterback, guys, that's gold. That's really good. I mean, unless you're going right quarterback in the front first couple rounds there, right? But then you're having to really piece together some running backs, some receivers, and hopefully something happens. But for me, John, this is interesting because what it does for the rest of the team, I actually think this is a significant improvement for Olave, for Michael Thomas, for Alvin Kamara. I mean, we're talking like from Jameis Winston. We're talking from Taysom Hill, right?
Andy Dalton and Taysom Hill. And yeah, right? I mean, like, it's been a carousel since Drew Brees left. Yeah.
I mean, significant improvement. And their defense is excellent. And John, you mentioned the key point. Their opponents that they are playing this year are dog shit. If you go back down through that list that you mentioned, there's no Josh Allen, there's no Jalen Hurts, there's no Patrick Mahomes, there's no, right? They're not playing these top echelon teams. The best ones that they're going to be playing, in all honesty, are going to be the Vikings and Detroit, pretty much, outside of a few others, right? And
who both have terrible defenses. Terrible defenses.
And, you know, Detroit's working their way to getting a better defense, but the Vikings, right, are really bad from a defensive perspective right now. So you're telling me that Derek Carr now walks in from a insanely difficult division in AFC West with the Chargers, the Broncos, the Chiefs, right, and the Raiders, right? But when he played there, to now walking into, I'm going to say it, Cream Puff Central. You know what I mean? And now you have the schedule that allows for that. And you're giving him, there's no Devontae Adams on this team, but you're giving him a good surrounding cast. I think Olave is going to benefit immensely from this. And also, I really like the tight ends here, John. There's a slew of them that they have now, right? Foster Moreau, which we'll talk about. They also have Juwan Johnson, and they also have Taysom Hill. So depending on who ends up working their way to tight end one, I love that. We saw what Derek Carr did with Darren Waller. I think that it's going to be replicated here. So for me, man, I'm actually really excited to see what the Saints can do. They definitely have an excellent defense that is going to be able to hold opponents. I think if they give Derek Carr the shot to open it up, man, I mean, again, he had 3,500 passing yards last year. I only see this getting better this year with the division in the schedule that they're playing. So for me, man, and again, in a 2-quarterback league, I personally am targeting the hell out of Derek Carr to get my number 2.
I think it's as safe as you can get. And what I like to do in a 2-quarterback league, we talk about stacks. That's kind of a theme today.
Stack attack.
The Derek Carr and the Chris Olave stack in a 2-quarterback league. I love that. I love stacking my second quarterback in double quarterback leagues or super flexes because you can plan for it. He's not getting drafted. He's so late that you can say, all right, I've got Olave. So now I'm going to target Derek Carr down here and you'll see when you need to be able to take him. But I like that too. Yeah. Excellent, man. Yeah. I think I think he's a good pick this year. I think he's going to help Chris Olave. And I think he makes we talked about who he's playing. He went from being the worst quarterback in his division to the best quarterback in his division. You know, I mean, think about that, really. It's mostly rookies and second-year guys in his division now. Oh, and Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's in his division, you know. All right, let's get to our number 3 guy. It's almost like, it feels like these guys almost just swapped teams, you know? Yeah, so you got Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Gorgeous. I love this guy. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Now he is taking Derek Carr's place in Las Vegas for the Raiders. What do you see? Do you see things really, like, I almost see this as a zero net gain.
Totally.
Really. Of Jimmy Garoppolo stepping into where Derek Carr was. How is this going to affect the Las Vegas Raiders now?
I think you're exactly right, John. I think it's a net zero gain, not negative, not positive. It's truly just, okay, we got a guy that's, you know, potentially a game manager type of dude who's going to be able to move the ball down the field. And the reason why I think this is interesting for Devontae, because I don't think this is a loss for Devontae by any means. We saw Jimmy G really feed Deebo Samuel. And so, right, they're different guys. I mean, Devontae's way better, in my opinion, than Deebo Samuel. So it will even bode better for Jimmy G in getting them the ball. And they don't have Darren Waller there anymore. And so now this opens up the floor even more so for that of Devontae Adams. And I believe they also signed Jacoby Myers, right? Who's going to be there. And they also have, right, the naked fucking mole rat and Hunter Renfrow. So like, he has a good supporting cast. So for me, man, I'm looking at this to your point. I don't think this is going to change much for anybody. And I think Jimmy G is going to walk in and be a very good, serviceable second quarterback that you can plug and play in a 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, and he's healthy. That's, the fact that he's healthy and going to be on the field immediately, it moves Devontae Adams up for me. I think Devontae Adams is just being slept on, man. I mean, is there another receiver that's being drafted in, at the turn, basically first, second round turn?
Crazy.
That could be the wide receiver 1 overall.
No,
it's Devontae Adams. I mean, it really is. The fact that Jimmy G's healthy and going to be throwing him the ball, I love it.
And John, real quick too, Jimmy G last year, guys, before he got hurt, he had 18 total touchdowns and 4 interceptions. 18 total touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Very efficient. Very efficient.
Yeah. And he's been able to support multiple receivers with Brandon Ayuk and Debo
and Kittle.
With McCaffrey. I mean, he's thrown the ball. He's spread it all around too. So if Josh Jacobs can kind of get his head right, I think he's in for a really big season as well. But I think it's going to be the Devontae Adams show. I think it really helps him out, man. I think he's going to have even more of a target share than he's had in the past, which sounds impossible. All right, let's get to a couple of these other guys here, Frank, and just touch base. These guys aren't guys you're going to draft. These guys are hopefully guys you're not going to have on your team or have to have. Maybe you'll plug them in in a 2-quarterback league or if there's an injury. But you should just be aware that these guys are where they are because there's a couple of receivers that it might affect here. Baker Mayfield looking like he's going to be the starter for Tampa Bay. Does that help? Does that hurt? You're looking at Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. They're kind of off my board. Does that sound crazy to you? With Baker throwing them the ball and Brady being gone and their offensive line not quite what it used to be. How do you feel about Baker being in Tampa Bay?
I don't think that's crazy to say that they're off your board by any means. I think if you can get them for dirt cheap, like Mike Evans is going right now. I mean,
it's late. You're not paying for these guys, really.
So, I mean, if you can snag them as your flex and then they end up performing, right? Mike Evans has had 9 straight seasons of 1,000 yards. Yeah. So if he can replicate that somehow, some way with Baker, or Kyle Trask or something crazy, awesome. You got a good value for a good flex and maybe you can trade piece him together for something big. But no, man, I think it's going to be pretty even keel. Honestly, I think we should probably expect what we have seen previously in terms of play that Baker Mayfield has done for his other receivers, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not real sexy, but I think they're going to have a decent floor. But I think it really caps the upside.
I think it helps Rachaad White. That's who I do think it helps from a dump off perspective. So I do think that could raise Rachaad White's value a bit.
That's a good point. All right. And then we've got a couple of quarterbacks here that are with new teams and they're backing up high draft pick rookies here. We've got Gardner Minshew. Love this guy. He's bringing his swagger and his moxie to Indianapolis, and he's going to, we assume, we don't really know if Anthony Richardson's going to be the starter at this point. We assume that that's going to happen and Gardner's going to be his backup. So that's pretty interesting to keep an eye on. This is a guy who could see some playing time this year. So think about him in a 2-quarterback league, especially off the waiver wire. Andy Dalton, the Red Rocket, the guy still playing here. He's going to be in Carolina backing up Bryce Young. So that's pretty interesting. Next guy, Jacoby Brissett, he was good. Okay. Jacoby Brissett is the best backup in the league, in my opinion. But he's in Washington now. That's interesting. They've got Sam Howell, their rookie that they've got here. Second year. I'm sorry. Yeah. Now we're assuming that he's going to be starting, but this is Riverboat Ron Rivera here, and he's already come out and said, "Don't sleep on Jacoby Brissett." When the head coach comes out and says not to sleep on the backup quarterback, that makes you go, okay, that's interesting. So and we also know that he's not very patient with his quarterbacks. No. If Sam Howell's not getting it done, we'll see Jacoby Brissett in the game. Definitely. They will make a change. And I expect that. I expect Brissett to start a handful of games for sure. Does this, would you rather see Brissett than Howell when it comes to Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson?
I'm going to be a hot take. No. And I say that because I loved watching Sam Howell at UNC, and had he come out a year before, he would have been a 1st-round pick. So I think giving Sam Howell a year to develop, I'm excited actually to see Sam Howell play, knowing that we probably saw the ceiling of Jacoby Brissett. Now, it was a good ceiling, right? What he did with Amari Cooper, Terry McLaurin could absolutely eat. But I'm excited to see Sam Howell, and then from Jacoby. To your point, I definitely think he's going to play at some point in time. But I'm excited to see Sam Howell.
Yeah. I mean, I think Terry McLaurin. I think the Amari Cooper comparison. I think that's perfect. That the year that Amari Cooper had last year, that's what I'm expecting with Terry McLaurin this year. I mean, really, just a solid wide receiver too, a guy that you feel great about putting in your flex if you can do that. All right, let's get on to a couple other guys. Marcus Mariota is in Philly now. Sam Darnold is in San Francisco. Taylor Heineke is in Atlanta. Now, that's interesting because this is another guy who could end up getting some playing time this year. Yeah, with Desmond Ridder, who's definitely a question mark. So Taylor Heineke could be interesting. Keep an eye on him as well. All right, there's the quarterbacks. Let's get to some running backs. Now, these guys you are going to be drafting, and these guys you are going to be starting. Let's start off with the number one here. Number one with a bullet. First guy, new face and new place, Miles Sanders, leaving Philadelphia, now in Carolina. Frankie, I'm warming up more and more and more every day to Miles Sanders. Tell me why that's a good idea.
I'm eating with Miles Sanders, baby. We're going to dinner. We're holding hands. I want to be best friends with this dude, right? You can draft him, guys. He's 19th overall running back this year, right? ADP 47. What that means is back half of 4, early 5. Absolutely love it. Guys, he's going to be the 3 down back at Carolina. They do not have Deontay Foreman anymore. They have Chuba Hubbard, who has tried to establish himself and is just not the guy. I love Miles Sanders. Draft him as soon as you can.
Yeah, he's at a discount as well. Where is he going right now? He's
4th, 5th,
fourth
back
round,
4th,
5th round. Yeah,
4th, early 5th.
That's a guy I'm targeting based on value every single time, man. He is going to be a true 3 down back. We saw what they did last year with Deontay Foreman and with a couple of these guys, and they all had really good seasons, man.
Really good
I mean,
seasons.
it's a good offensive line, and they are going to run the ball a lot. He's
Rookie
there to
QB.
take pressure off of Bryce Young. Exactly. And I think Miles Sanders is the perfect guy for that. So I really do think he's in a great position. To have him as your running back too just makes me so fucking happy, man. Yeah. Anything else on Miles Sanders?
No,
Any concerns with him? I mean, I think he's very safe too. I'm not worried about him in any way. As the 19th running back off the board, I think he easily returns that value. Easily,
John. I mean, 1,200 yards rushing last year, 11 touchdowns. I love it. I love everything. And they paid him. That's the thing. They paid this dude. They're going to run him into the ground.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, cool. Let's get to our second guy here. This guy, interesting. I need you to talk to me about him. Yeah. I need you to give me, because I know that you're high on this guy, or have been in the past anyway. And I just don't know how to feel about him right now. DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift leaves Detroit, and he is now in Philly, which is a really interesting situation here. We've got Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift. We're going to talk about both of these guys. Actually, let's just talk about them now. Let's lump them both in. Rashad Penny coming from Seattle, going to Philadelphia. So now this Philadelphia backfield, who had Miles Sanders, this is all really interesting how this is shaken out. DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny in the backfield with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. I mean, this offense is crazy good right now. What do you see shaking out there with Rashad Penny, DeAndre Swift? How do we see things happening here? I think they're very confusing guys.
Very confusing, John. And it's actually going to be difficult because they still have Kenneth Gainwell. And Kenneth Gainwell came on really well last year in lieu of some of the Miles Sanders touches. So it's going to be interesting. For me, I see Rashad Penny kind of being honestly the early down back, right? If he can stay healthy, that is his motto. He is extremely efficient and very good when he's healthy, but he's never healthy, right? He averaged 10.2 points at PPR last year. Now for DeAndre Swift, it was weird last year because he was excellent the year before. And last year, everybody was high on him, including myself. I mean, you had Deuce Staley like coming out here saying, dude, you are amazing. You have the ability to be the guy. Got banged up early on, but Jamal Williams never let him get his opportunity back, right? With 17 touchdowns last year. So the interesting thing about DeAndre Swift, though, is he had 48 receptions last year, and he still averaged 13.7 points a game in PPR because of his receptions, right? He also had almost 400 yards receiving, still had 8 total touchdowns. So for me, man, I'm looking at this. And if I'm deciding between the two, right, because the ADP in DeAndre Swift is that of 63, Rashad Penny's is 91. So there is kind of a significant difference there, about 2.5, 3 rounds. So for me, John, I am actually leaning more towards that of DeAndre Swift. And I say that because of his higher ceiling from a receiving perspective. I like that Jalen Hurts has the ability to dump this off and be able to take some of the heat off, that he necessarily didn't have with Miles Sanders, right? That's actually where Kenneth Gainwell did very well. And I think they wouldn't have brought in DeAndre Swift had they been super satisfied with Gainwell from a receiving perspective. So for me, man, I really like DeAndre Swift's floor because of his receiving perspective, and you can get him as your running back 3, 4, right, at that point in time, compared to the values there with Penny, right? As I mentioned, there's a 2.5, 3 round difference, but I'm so sick of wasting picks on Rashad Penny for him to just shit the bed because he's hurt. And so I don't know, man. For me,
well, wait a minute. You're going to say that about Penny, but you're not going to say that about DeAndre Swift? I mean, I haven't seen this guy play enough to even know what role. I don't know what kind of running back he is because I haven't seen enough of him on the field. That's in my mind. See, I'm taking the opposite strategy as you right now. I'm sorry, but I respectfully disagree with you, Frank. I'm taking Rashad Penny all day long. I don't know who DeAndre Swift is. And I think I feel the opposite. I feel like his floor is 0. I feel like his floor is, why the fuck did DeAndre Swift not play today? I mean, how many times did you say that last year too? Why is Swift not in the game right now at all? I don't know. I don't know what that is. I think he's like a shiny race car. The guy is so talented. And even I remember seeing in camp and everything last year, that was just like, wow, this guy is a freaking stud. He's so good. I don't know what it is. We've never seen him carry a load at all. I assume he's going to be, they're very distinct roles as far as pass catching. So I assume DeAndre Swift is going to be the third down back, is going to be in there, getting receptions out of the backfield. But if I can wait 3 rounds, I don't know if I can feel good starting DeAndre Swift at any time. I feel like there's enough volume with Penny that's going to be a lot safer. Yes, he's got the injury risks, but assuming he's healthy, assuming he's playing, which he is at the moment, then I'm much more comfortable with Rashad Penny. To get him as your 4th running back, I think it's beautiful. I think it's a no-brainer for me.
Do you think Penny's ceiling is higher than Swift's?
I think they both have high ceilings depending on the utilization. And that's the other question is I need to see how they're going to utilize these guys. Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to know that really prior to draft season. It's going to be something that's going to have to evolve, which luckily their ADPs do not force you to have to throw them in your lineup. Where you're taking these guys, you can draft them and say, God damn, especially if one of them gets hurt, which is highly likely, then you've got a guy in the backfield that's getting just a ton of work on a team that, I mean, come on, man, they dominated last year. They get up in the first half, and then the second half, they just run the damn ball. I don't think Jalen Hurts is going to run quite as much as he did in the past. I think they want to protect that asset, obviously. I love both of these guys. I just don't know exactly how it's going to shake out yet. Okay, let's get to another guy here. New face and new place. David Montgomery goes from Chicago, is now in Detroit. It's funny how all these teams we're talking, it's so intertwined, right? All these different teams with DeAndre Swift leaving Detroit and then David Montgomery coming in there. So with David Montgomery in Detroit, it's David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And we did a whole segment on Jahmyr Gibbs last week. What are you thinking about Monty here? How does his outlook look here?
I love it. I love everything about it. And the reason being is because you can get him for dirt cheap, John. You can get him, his average draft position right now is 76, right? So that means you're floating around 6th, 7th round, right? Respectively for David Montgomery. So if you can get him in that frame, I mean, it's incredible. And we've seen Detroit's motto. We've seen them go, two-headed monster, right? You mentioned DeAndre Swift. We were talking about more, and I was talking about more receiving, right? We talked about Jamal Williams being literally 0 receiving and being an absolute ground and pound. I see this 100% playing out very similarly. I see them probably even flanking out Jahmyr Gibbs a bit more and maybe even playing both at the same time, right? And so I love David Montgomery, super high floor for me. I think the ceiling's a bit capped with Gibbs there. I mean, not a bit. I definitely think it's capped there. But I love it. It's not very risky, man. And for the draft position that you can get him, I mean, it's dirt cheap. He averaged 11.1 points last year in PPR. I could see it being kind of similar, maybe a little bit less. But again, if you're getting him for your fourth running back, love it.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's got a high floor. I think he's safe. I don't think it's very sexy. I don't think it's very exciting, but I think it's just one of those running backs that you can plug in as an RB2 and just feel good about it, and just not really have to worry about it. All right. Sounds good. Let's keep going here. We keep bringing up the same names, man. A lot of these guys, it's so incestual, isn't it? Jamal Williams. We just talked about the Detroit backfield. Now Jamal Williams leaving Detroit and going to New Orleans. So this is interesting. We talked about this backfield a little bit already. Talk to me about Jamal Williams. I mean, the guy obviously, 17 touchdowns last year?
Crazy. League leading.
Yes. I mean, just insane, man. So what are you thinking about him in the New Orleans backfield here?
I think early on, he's gold. I think he's gold. As we mentioned earlier with Alvin Kamara's suspension, 3 games, he is golden. You can get him at 95 as his ADP. So again, super late, guys, 8th, 9th round, right? And I just think it's just beautiful. And I also think he's a very good handcuff to Alvin Kamara, right? Because they brought him in to play. Right. He's not a guy that you kind of bring in and he's going to have to fight for a job, that kind of thing. I think they brought him in to play. That way, Alvin Kamara can be a little bit more in the pass catching role. So for me, again, very similar to Monty here. Right. And it's funny. They're actually switching, to your point, John, like with Monty going to Detroit, et cetera. I like it. I think that it's a little bit more fun and exciting for Jamal Williams because of the suspension than that of what Monty would be. And for the value that you can get for him, John, I definitely think people should be absolutely targeting Jamal Williams.
I do too. And, you can't count on touchdowns. It's the least sticky stat that there is predicting touchdowns. But when you've got a guy like that who is so good on the goal line, he just is. He has been. I mean, just amazing. He's going to get those opportunities. So I think that it's more likely that he scores a bunch of touchdowns, and maybe not 17, but because of his utilization and his role, that is his role. So they're inside the 10, inside the 5. I think Jamal Williams is in the game the whole time. So I do think he gives you a nice floor. But yeah, I think Monty and Jamal Williams are very similar.
Yeah.
And there's a rookie, so I think they're going to trust Jamal Williams a lot more with the ball than the rookie, at least until Kamara comes back. But it could be a situation to where, again, break it down into quarters. You've got 3-4 games here that you're going to be able to use Jamal Williams, trade him high. He's going to have a couple of multi-touchdown games. I mean, he's just going to without Kamara in there. The game that he scores 2 touchdowns and scores you 20 points, sell that motherfucker immediately. I'm serious. I mean, because you didn't draft him to need him. Exactly. Most likely you're drafting him in 8th, 9th round. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't need to trade his ass, get something for him, man. I like that. Okay, let's touch base with a couple of guys here. Samaje Perine, leaving Cincinnati. He was very, very serviceable. He came in. Very good backup running back that a team can use and really help the team. It was a great move for Denver to get him because Javonte Williams was so questionable. We didn't know what was going to be happening here with his, recovering from the knee surgery. Samaje Perine, in the beginning of the draft season here, I was looking at going, guys, everybody's sleeping on him. He's going to start for Denver for the first couple of weeks until Javonte gets back. Now it's looking like Javonte is going to play, but I think Perine still has value. I don't think they're going to run Javonte to the ground. Mm-hmm. They've got to be somewhat cautious with him. Do you agree?
Totally agree. James White, John. Think James White here is what I like. Third down back, very efficient. I like Samaje Perine here. And again, super late, guys. We're talking ADP 104. So late round. So yeah, I really like Samaje Perine's upside.
Yeah, this is a guy, and if you drafted Javonte, I think it's a great handcuff too, because if something does happen to Javonte, it is Perine, and we've seen him be able to carry a load and be a 3-down back. He can do it. Yeah. All right, let's talk about another guy, new face and new place. This is interesting. I really like this landing spot for this guy, and I think he's really being slept on. I think he's just going so late in drafts here. Damian Harris, previously with the New England Patriots, now with the Buffalo Bills. So you've got Damian Harris. We've got a lot of interesting backfields here that I think are going to be really cool to see play out. Damian Harris in the backfield with James Cook. That's what this is going to look like here. Talk to me about Damian Harris. I think he's being slept on, man. I think he's going at a great value in drafts on a very good team that scores a lot. And this is going to be the guy who's going to be carrying the ball inside the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. He at last year he averaged 8.2 points a game in PPR. He, had 462 yards and then lost his job right after he got hurt to Ramondre Stevenson. It was the Ramondre Stevenson show. And so now with him being in kind of a fickle backfield, I mean, with James Cook, everybody's like saying James Cook's the guy. James Cook's the guy. Well, last year it didn't make me feel super warm and fuzzy with James Cook. I mean, because Devin Singletary, right, had the job and then kind of gave it away to James Cook, but James Cook really never took it. And so now with Damian Harris being there, to your point, man, when the Bills run up the score, they are going to run the ball. And so I think now the only thing that we might differ on, John, is I don't know about the goal line, because we saw Josh Allen be so effective in the goal line, running the ball. So to your point, it's going to be a wait and see for me. I mean, again, his ADP right now is 106, very similar to that of Samaje Perine. My question is to you, John, looking at these two ADPs, would you rather have Samaje Perine or would you rather have Damian Harris?
I would rather have Damian Harris. I just think, I'd rather have Damian Harris.
Interesting.
It's not even close to me, actually.
Really?
Yeah. It's not close. I mean, Damian Harris I think he's a good piece to have on your team as kind of a utility plug-in. This is a guy that'll plug in for your RB2 on bye weeks or in case of injury. I think his ceiling is completely capped because I don't think he's going to catch a pass a game. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. James Cook is in that role. They've got Dalton Kincaid. They've got, Gabe Davis. They've got plenty of options in the passing game. Damian Harris isn't going to see any of that. No. And you're right. I mean, some of these running backs, Josh Allen, it's unfortunate having these big bruising running backs for these kind of teams because Josh Allen is going to steal all the touchdowns. Jalen Hurts, same thing. He steals all the touchdowns. Lamar Jackson steals all the touchdowns. So it's difficult. So that caps his ceiling immediately. But I think he's going to have, 60, 70 yards rushing. I think he's going to have a very good, solid floor for you on a team that is going to run the ball in the second half to close him out. But again, it's not very sexy. I think it's a Band-Aid piece for your team. All right, let's just do some honorable mentions here. Just some guys. These aren't guys I'm saying going after. They're all going late or free for you, but just want to make you aware that they are on these teams. These are guys that could come up in the waiver wire segments, and with injuries and things like that. Deontay Foreman, now with the Chicago Bears. Interesting what that backfield's going to look like with Khalil Herbert. I think Foreman will have an opportunity to work his way into that starting lineup at some point and get some playing time. Devin Singletary, this is interesting. Devin Singletary leaves the Bills, is in Houston now, assuming he's backing up Dameon Pierce, who had a great rookie showing. Yeah, but Singletary will have some juice on that team. He's going to get some playing time in that backfield. Again, not a backfield I'm targeting and going after. No. Melvin Gordon, we've got out there. Baltimore ended up signing Melvin Gordon. I don't think this really does anything other than for injury if J.K. Dobbins or Gus Edwards can't play, but I think he's the third option there. Kenyon Drake in Indianapolis, not really relevant. Latavius Murray in Buffalo, they're just loading up on some of those bigger guys like that. I think they have a scheme of what they want. They want a big guy to go with James Cook. To really kind of scare offenses with Josh Allen in the backfield. Ronald Jones is now in Dallas backing up Tony Pollard. Ronald Jones also suspended for 2 games, by the way. Dearness Johnson. We love him because he backed up Nick Chubb in Cleveland. He's now in Jacksonville, and that's very interesting. I think you'll see him on the field quite a bit. I don't know. We're not sure if Travis Etienne can take a full workload. So I think you'll see Dearness Johnson in there exploding sometimes. James Robinson also with the Giants. All right, Frankie, that is quarterbacks and running backs, new faces and new places, man. There's a lot of guys. Next week, stay tuned. We got receivers and tight ends, and there are a lot of receivers. These guys, woo, baby, man. That's just a big carousel every year. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Thanks for joining the show. We love having you here. We love all the response we're getting on social media. Please subscribe to the podcast everywhere podcasts are found. Spotify, Google, Apple, all the weird ones. There's like 20 other ones that we go to. Who looks at this shit? You know, I don't even know. On YouTube, please watch the video, subscribe to YouTube, click the notification button. It'll let you know when there's a new episode coming out every week. Frankly Fantasy Football, and on Twitter or X at Frankly Fantasy F. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Frankie, you ready next week? Are you ready for this? Let's go, baby. Any parting words for us, Frank?
Enjoy the ride, boys and women. We're going to have a good time.
Boys and women. May the fantasy gods smile upon you. Bye.